Welcome back to the News Tonight. Since the early 90s, America's biggest cities have been losing their black residents. Recent released data from the latest 2020 census shows that trend has continued, leaving cities with less black population and adding more black residents to the surrounding suburbs. The number of big cities losing black residents nearly doubled within the last 20 years, going from 13 to 23 cities, and roughly half of the black population within the 100 largest metro areas in the country, they're now suburbanites. That's more than a 10% increase since the turn of the century. After Detroit, Chicago is the second big city with the most black attrition, with 85,000 black people leaving since 2010. Joining me to get a fuller context as to the reasons why this slow-cooking black exodus continues to this day are two scholars of city planning. From Chicago, I have Dr. Stacy Sutton. She's an associate professor of urban planning and policy at the University of Illinois, Chicago. And from the best city on the planet, I have Dr. Akira Drake Rodriguez. She's an assistant professor of city and regional planning at the Stuart Weitzman School of Design at the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you both so much for joining me. Stacey, I'm going to start with you. Why does this happen? What do you think are the top reasons for these developments, these shifts?
Yeah, there are a few. I mean, I guess if I would say the top ones, it's a lack of opportunities, certain types of opportunities, economic opportunities and upward mobility for black folks, especially in Chicago, but other cities, education, public schools. One would argue safety, questions of public safety as well. Those would probably be the top.
Akira, is there another reason? Can you add to the conversation a little bit? What's adding to these developments? What is something that we sort of take for granted that an expert doesn't in terms of making sense of these shifts?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, experience is also really useful in thinking about why people are moving. So we know that people are moving, but we really don't have like a definitive set of reasons of why, right? So Dr. Sutton laid out some really good causes around public schools and opportunity and education, as well as public safety. But you can also look at, just the realistic aspect that cities may not be so hospitable to people anymore. People's families may be moving, and they need larger spaces for people to have better mobility, whether it's a ranch style house or stairs. They want more space. They need to take in family and friends, so they need a larger house that you may find in the suburbs for cheaper. So some of those are other sort of reasons, but the experiences are really sort of underdocumented on why we're seeing these shifts.
What it do? This is your brother Bishop of Bishop Zone TV. And look, family, we got to have a real conversation for a second. Can I use this time to help y'all navigate through America real quick? Because there's some things that's going on in this country right now that I don't know if black people are generally ready for. I don't know if they're prepared for what's coming. And when I say what's coming, I'm not talking about some apocalyptic scenario that's going to take place and then it's going to create this dystopian community of black people in this country. But what I mean is this: you have to think about inflation. You have to think about economic downturns. You have to think about this pandemic. You have to think about increase in median home prices. You have to think about crime. You have to think about the increase of suburbanizing black people, which moves us further out from city cores, which creates a whole nother set of problems and issues that plague major metropolitan areas throughout this country. You have to consider all of that and figure out, as a black American, what are you going to do for the next 5 to 20 years to increase your level of success in this country? Because I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of these people, a lot of these YouTubers, are not giving you the information you need in order to succeed. And when I mean YouTubers, I'm talking specifically to black YouTubers, black content creators who have a huge following, yet they can't provide you any avenues, any outlets on how to, survive in this country. Usually it's talking points dealing with victimization. Like, oh, Becky did this, Karen did that. Here's what the Jamaicans think about you. Here's what continental Africans think about you. Blah, 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 blah. And for the record, this information that I'm sharing with people, and I'm not saying it like I'm just some guru myself, but I feel like this conversation is not being discussed enough. But this information that I'm giving to the people that I'm having with, this is not just for Black Americans. This is for anybody can really, utilize this information. But this is for everybody, right? When I say everybody, this is every Black person, continental African, Caribbean, whatever. It's just you need to figure out what your role is going to be in this country moving forward, because there is a wedge growing between the have and have-nots. Let me say it again. There's a wedge in this country that's growing between the have and the have-nots. The middle class is shrinking. That's the middle class. That's not even the Black middle class, because the Black middle class generally makes less than their white counterparts in other demographics in this country. Black America has to move differently moving forward. You can't rely on the Democratic Party to save you. You Black conservatives, you can't get off the Democratic plantation and think that, well, we've been doing it wrong, so we need to get with the Republican Party. They're not going to save you either. This is something that I've seen for the past, I would say maybe 2 to 5 years. I've been seeing it generally amongst, my peers, people in their 20s, even older people. But Black people more and more are finding out that there's really no safe havens for Black people in America. And what I mean by that is this. Black people, a lot of Black people, just go on YouTube. Look at how many Black people move to different cities looking for a safe haven, looking for this quote unquote Black Mecca that doesn't exist. Even Atlanta's not a Black Mecca, right? But they're looking for this paradise that does not exist in America. And you get several people who might move to these cities only to find out that what they were looking for in these cities did not exist. Then they get disappointed. Then they decide this place wasn't for me. I'm going to tell you the cons. I'm going to tell you why I moved away from the city and I'm moving back home, blah, 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 blah. And the rest is history. And you're seeing more and more of this daily, with cities like Houston, Atlanta, Dallas. Those seem to be like the top 3 cities for younger Black people. And Black people in my age range. I mean, I'm not old and shit. But, I'm in my 30s. I'm not going to, say how old I am. But anyway, that's a different topic. But you see a lot of my peers feeling as though I've ran out of options in America. I tried moving here. I can't move to New York. I can't move to LA. I can't move to San Francisco. Those places are too damn expensive. I can't move to Chicago because they got a lot of violence going on amongst Black people. Too damn cold. I thought I was gonna find my oasis in the South, and the South has a whole nother set of problems. Where can I go to? I'm speaking specifically for those who are choosing to stay in America. Black people, just understand that you would never find your paradise. You would never find your oasis. This is America with 3 Ks. So it's essentially still a white supremacist system. That's not me suggesting that, you walk down the street, you get beat over the head just because you're Black. I'm not using that as an excuse as to why you can't find a job. No, you have to hold yourself accountable for why you can't find yourself a job. All I'm saying is that as a Black individual in this country, you have to take more steps in order to achieve a level of success that white people can achieve a little bit easier. I'm not saying that they don't work hard for it, but they can achieve it a little bit easier because they have less roadblocks based on the color of their skin. That exists for us. That's no excuse for you to be a bum, for you to use that as saying, well, I can't get anywhere. You can get anywhere, but you have to be smarter. You have to be more strategic on how you move, how you navigate through this country. And I'm telling people right now, Black America, I'm sorry, I have to say this, but maybe big cities are not for us anymore. Maybe the major cities in America are not the best options on moving for opportunities. I understand that major cities are the cultural hubs of this country. I get that. Major cities have amenities that smaller cities don't have. But I'm telling you right now, with the cost of living going up, specifically in these major cities, I don't know if y'all been paying attention, but I'm talking about the city limits in most major cities are losing black population. Let me say that again. Most major cities in this country are seeing an influx, or seeing a reduction in black people. Black people, by and large, are moving to the suburbs. And that's not necessarily because it's their first choice, but that's just the way things are going. The cost of living is going up in the city centers of most major metropolitan areas in this country, and black people are being forced to move to the suburbs. Now, that's a plus in some cases, because some of these suburbs are, safer and have better schools than the quote unquote inner cities in most major American cities. However, we are starting to see a trend of suburbs going downhill and the quality of life of inner cities going up. But they're going up because they're being gentrified, and they're replacing black people with non-black people with money. We have to take all this into consideration. And it is my belief that more black people in this country, if you cannot afford to live in a major city, you need to move to a smaller city. Because the quality of life in smaller cities and the cost of living in smaller cities will benefit you more than moving to Atlanta, Houston, Dallas, or hell, even Charlotte at this point. The trend of black people, and look, I'm giving you a 5 to 20 year plan. Because the more people move to smaller cities, eventually those cities probably will go up too, as far as cost of living. But for right now, you can move to those cities and benefit from the cost of living. It's a lower cost of living in some of these smaller cities. And by the way, I'm going to give you a list of small cities to move to that will increase your quality of life. The cost of living is cheaper. It's more affordable. Thinking about moving to Houston, Atlanta is a no-no. I see so many people, man, I don't know where to go. Man, I hope Houston ain't like Atlanta. These cities are not going to live up to your expectations, especially the least affordable they get. They're not going to live up to your expectations. I'm sorry to tell you, Black America, but the system continues to win. They continue to win, and you continue to lose because you don't control resources. You don't own a plethora of resources. You are not in a financial space to really set the tone for anybody. Generally, collectively, the Black Caucus has set you up for failure. They're more concerned about being in cahoots with the Democratic Party instead of prioritizing Black America. So I'm telling you, cost of living, quality of life is best suited for people in smaller cities. And there is a trend growing right now that suggests that more black people are waking up to the idea of skipping these bigger cities and moving to these smaller cities. I'm gonna read y'all this article. And then after I read y'all that article, I'm gonna give y'all a list of major cities, not major cities. And then after I read this article, I'm gonna give you a list of smaller cities to move to that are not just, and by the way, I'm not giving y'all smaller cities that are crime infested, that don't have an economy, because you could move to a small city that has a high crime rate and a lack of jobs and be just as down and out in that smaller city compared to, your experiences in a bigger city. So I'm gonna give y'all some cities to look out for, and eventually, hey, I think you should look at these cities because these cities are good choices to move to. So this article right here from ABC News is entitled U.S. Black Population. The biggest growth is in smaller cities. So right here, I'm just gonna read a couple of paragraphs, not the whole thing. So Brandon Manning and his wife were both born in the U.S. South and have been itching to return. But Manning didn't want to go back to his native Atlanta because of the traffic, housing costs, and sprawl. So when he was offered a job teaching at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, Texas, the couple decided to give the smaller city a chance. They weren't alone. The largest African-American population growth in pure numbers over the past decade didn't take place in Atlanta or Houston, long identified as hubs of black life, or rather in less congested cities with lower profiles: Fort Worth, Columbus, Ohio, Jacksonville, Florida, and Charlotte, North Carolina. Each gained between 32,000 and 40,000 new black residents from 2010 to 2020, according to 2020 census figures. Meanwhile, black residents left the nation's largest cities, New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, by the tens of thousands. Quoted, "The sprawl of a Houston or an Atlanta is just massive, and traffic makes it hard to get around." I just want to insert, Manning, that brother is completely right. Look, I come from a small city. I ain't trying to move back to my hometown. I'm going to keep it real. I live in Houston now, but he is completely right. I'm not going to lie to you. It's been times where I've said, man, maybe I need to move my family to a smaller city, because the perks of a major city at this point are not really just doing it for me. You know, the cons are outweighing the perks in some instances. I mean, I'm not completely ready to move away from a big city myself, but hey, I'm thinking about it more, so who knows? So let me get back to the article. So Manning, an assistant professor of black literature and culture who moved to Fort Worth from Las Vegas, quote, "We wanted something that was manageable." The Mannings are a part of an emerging pattern of black migration from larger cities to smaller ones, primarily in the South, according to Sabrina Pendergrass, an assistant professor for African American and African Studies at the University of Virginia. After a decades-long migration by black people to Atlanta, there's this feeling that it might be tougher to get an economic foothold if you wanted to open a business, Pendergrass said. In cities like Charlotte, there's not as much competition. So that's the gist of the article. I mean, it's a pretty good article. It has a lot of good insight, but I want more black people to focus on the smaller markets. You will survive better in this country, and you will have less of a headache if you start considering smaller cities to move to. Look, I understand smaller cities might not be as culturally enriching as the bigger cities. I get that. I understand if you're 20-something, young 20-something with no kids, no family, then you probably could afford to live. And when I say afford, not necessarily financially, but you can afford to live in a bigger city, kind of, I'm not gonna say waste your time, but just kind of figure it out in your youth till you decide, well, you know what, I got my cultural experience out, but it's just too expensive for me to stay here. So, hey, I'm willing to settle down now, build a family, and move to a smaller city. Atlanta is not going anywhere. Houston's not going anywhere. If you can afford to live in these cities, I would say, yeah, okay, move to those cities. But if you know in your hearts of hearts, when you start looking at those prices of homes, and you start looking at, okay, well, the homes in the city center are a little too expensive for me, I'm gonna look elsewhere. I'm gonna look in the suburbs. And then you look at the suburbs are the median home prices are going up. And then you have that long ass commute on top of the fact that it's just more and more people moving here, which makes it much more competitive. Then you should start thinking about other cities. And I'm here to help you with that. So I'm gonna give you a list of smaller cities to move to think about. And hey, you do the research yourself after that. I hope y'all get something out of this conversation that we're having. Like I said, a lot of people are not gonna hit you with this. People are just gonna tell you, hey, if you dream big, if God tells you to do this, then just move to Houston, move to Dallas, move to Atlanta, move to DC. No, it might not be for you. It might not be for you. And I'd rather my people win than struggle. Even if that means having to drive to a bigger city to go to an airport, or, not having some of the cultural amenities that these cities have, that's okay. You can make the cultural amenities. You can create your own. That's the beauty about living in a smaller city, is that it's less competition. So let's go to this list. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's go.
There is one last question that I'm sure lots of people would like to know. Is there a special woman in your life? Really?
Yeah, definitely.
Who?
It's just the love, man. like just looking at reality on some. That's how I be.
Alright, and there you have it. Now, I know these cities are smaller than what you're used to, but don't count them out. These cities are going to come up, and you might want to get to them before they get too hot. Alright? Learn how to navigate through this system we call America, and you be straight. You know, we black, we can survive. So, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.